Hello, welcome to the live stream. How's everyone doing today? Do you think Iran should get nuclear weapons? What does everyone think? И тоже ты думаешь, что женщины водят машины лучше мужчин? Я слышал, что они ведут переговоры. Они ведут переговоры. Они вели себя очень агрессивно. Они вели себя очень агрессивно. Они повели себя глупо. Во что они верят? И кому верит? Кому верит? И во что они верят? Как во... Еще раз. Как возгоняет негласие? Несогласие. Еще раз, пожалуйста. Как во... Еще раз, пожалуйста. Извини. Окей. Я повторяю. Как возникает несогласие? Трудности возникали каждый месяц. Может возникнуть масса вопросов. Воспитывайте себя. Восхищайтесь мужем. Они собрали инвесторам. Часто вспоминаю лето. Тучи над городом стали. Тучи над городом стали. Тучи над городом встали. Hello, welcome, Pancho. Welcome to the live stream. Thank you for your question and your comment. You asked which country is going to support Israel? Um, Obviously the U.S., right? The United States is an ally of Israel, so right. So I guess the United States will, but probably not a lot. I mean, I don't think the Middle East at all will support Israel. I think the Middle East is mostly on the side of Iran. So, but the United States is a longtime ally of Israel, so I'm guessing that they would probably support each other there. What do you think? Do you think there's any country that's going to support Israel? Сонце сходить і заходить. Сонце сходить. Сонце сходить. Сонце сходить i zahodit. Slunce svodit i zahodit. Каждый выбирает, что ему угодно. Каждый Каждый выбирает, что ему угодно. Каждый выбирает, что ему... Еще раз, пожалуйста, извини. Каждый выбирает, что ему угодно. Они, выда... Они выдавали себя за русский. Они выдавали себя за русский. Yes, I also do believe that it would, yeah. So, Hancho, yes, I also do believe the same. I believe it will lead to a big war because the Arab countries will stand by and support Israel. But I guess a bigger question is, will the Allies support Israel because, or sorry, the Arab countries will support Iran? I meant to say, sorry, I just said that they will support Israel. I meant to actually say that the Arab countries will support Iran. And what I was about to say was, well, and I don't even really know if Israel's allies will really help them because a lot of countries like Canada are very practical, and Canada like will not engage in a war really unless they're in a war themselves. Like, you know what I mean? And I think the Arab countries are more like ready for war, but countries like Canada and even the United States, I don't really see us being like ready to go to war and unless it's absolutely necessary, you know? I think the United States puts up a bigger talk than it actually can deliver, in my opinion. And the same with Canada. Canada and the United States, they both put up a bigger front than they actually can promise. Yes, I definitely don't. Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that, Honcho. I agree with what you're saying for sure. And I also think, to add to what you're saying, I think that the Ukrainian president, Russia will never let that guy just like give up, if that makes sense. I feel like Russia will see to it that the Ukrainian president, Volodymyr Zelensky, he is put in prison, he is strip searched, he is arrested, he is put in a prison cell. Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, Russia will just not let him just, oh, okay, so the war's over. Like, Russia will prosecute, Russia will strip search Volodymyr Zelensky, they'll put him in prison, they will put him in a prison cell. Russia won't stop because the president of Russia, I mean to say the president of Ukraine, like he is considered a war criminal among the Russians, right? They're not just gonna get let a war criminal, right? So I feel like when JD Vance, when JD Vance was saying that they had negotiations with Russia, peace talks, but Russia wanted too much. Yeah, Russia wants a lot. Russia probably wants Volodymyr Zelensky, president of Ukraine. They probably want him arrested and strip searched and put in a prison cell. They probably want him in prison. That's probably one of the things that what JD Vance was talking about, how they wanted too much, because he kept saying that JD Vance kept saying that they had talks with Russia, but that apparently Russia just wanted too much in terms of the peace talks, and so they couldn't come to an agreement. The Ukrainian war escalated to that level because the United States wanted it to escalate to that level. Because I'll tell you what, the United States, they control a lot more than people realize. Like if the United States didn't want Ukraine to go to war with Russia, the United States could have gone in and stopped Ukraine. Like the United States could have gone in and stopped Ukraine. But whenever like a country's doing something and no one's stopping them, it's because the United States is not stopping them. And then the United States is just sitting back, pretending as if, oh, they had no idea that Ukraine was going to attack Russia. Oh, BS. The Ukraine would be nothing without the United States. If Ukraine didn't have the United States support, the Ukraine would have been already part of Russia. They would have been annexed already, the whole country. What's more interesting now is, so if you go on VK.com, which is like Russia's version of Facebook, Russia's version, they're all celebrating in the name of Iran. Like they're all the Russians, they're all supporting Iran and they're giving lots of comments about how they support Iran. So it's very clear whose side the Russians are. They're very much on Iran's side. I wonder if like any kind of biological warfare has been unleashed. Um, that's actually just as scary as a nuclear war. I mean, people keep, saying, "Oh, a nuclear war is imminent. It could happen. They don't want Iran to get nuclear weapons." What about biological weapons? I mean, Iran getting biological weapons is probably just as scary as Iran getting nuclear weapons, really. So, I mean, why wouldn't the Americans be talking more about that? I mean, I think they should. I think they should talk about the fact that biological weapons are just as scary and dangerous as nuclear weapons. And biological weapons actually might be easier to get their hands on than actual nuclear weapons. So that's another point to consider. And a biological weapon, especially in the Middle East, well, perhaps I guess the reason why the Arabs are hesitant to use biological weapons is because it'd be hard to control, right? Because it's hard to biological weapons. It's hard to just keep it to one area, right? Because the biological weapon would spread, probably wipe out the Middle East. I'm sure Israel would be happy if Israel evacuated Israel and then wiped out the Middle East with a biological weapon, and then the Israelis would return, all celebrating back to their. But see, that would be scary, catastrophic if the Israelis. Imagine if Israel unleashed a biological weapon on the Middle East. All those Israeli men, they got up, they left Israel, they left Gaza, they went to the United States temporarily. They unleashed a biological weapon on the Middle East. They wiped out the Middle East, and then all after they wiped out the Middle East with a biological weapon, then the Israelis, Israel, they went back to Israel, and then they set up, and then they took over all of the Middle East. Yes, biological weapons are more subtle. You are right, Hancho. And they probably wouldn't even notice, like, for a while. Like you said, like, they're subtle, the biological weapons. So it would take a long time for them to even notice the effects. Like, a long time, for example, 3 weeks. 3 weeks is a long time when it comes to biological weapons. I don't mean like 3 years. I mean like 3 weeks to notice. Obviously, nuclear weapons, they notice within hours, nuclear weapons, but like the effects of biological weapons could take 3 weeks, and by that time, it's too late. And then, you know, how are the Americans or the Israelis or the Arabs supposed to prove their allegations? It's a lot of effort to prove biological warfare. Like they have to, you know what I mean? Because it's so easily to be spread. Like, I mean, like it could just be spread so easily, biological warfare. So how can they prove like who delivered it, who started it? That's why they had a hard time proving COVID, right? That's why they had a hard time proving who was behind COVID. They still really can't. I mean, they still really haven't been able to prove who was exactly behind COVID, the COVID pandemic. So, I mean, no, yeah, and I'm just saying, like, hypothetically speaking, a biological war would probably be more scary, nasty than a nuclear war, because a nuclear war, the nuclear bomb will, even though it obviously will be catastrophic, it will more or less stay within the same place. But I still actually think that a nuclear war would be worse for Mother Earth. uh, Now, a biological war would be also terrible, but a biological war would be especially scary because it would spread. Like it wouldn't just be contained in the one space. It could spread all over the Middle East. It could spread to North America. It could spread to Asia. A biological war. It's scary to think that people have weapons at all. I mean, I think Like, if imagine if the whole world just got rid of all their weapons and nobody had weapons. I mean, if nobody had weapons, then we'd all be safe, right? If no one had weapons. But the reality is people aren't going to give up their weapons, right? I mean, the United States doesn't want to give up their weapons. Russia doesn't want to give up their weapons, right? So, another thing that's kind of interesting is I was watching this morning a news program in which they had a person from Israel, then two people, I guess, representing the Middle East, and then they had the host. And well, first off, the host of the news program, her facial expressions, like it was as if she seemed happy that the war was going on. Like she was smiling, like she was talking about the war and smiling simultaneously. It was kind of creepy. So I'm sure other people must have noticed it. But then the other thing too was they had an Israeli guy, and he was debating two women from the Middle East, and one of the women was from Turkey, and she's from the Turks, right? The Turks duo, right? They're like a they're like a news program, and I guess she was representing the Middle East and representing Iran, but I mean, she's from Turkey, so I would rather have heard someone from Iran talking, because the Middle East is not like not everyone from the Middle East can be totally trusted, right? Obviously, so unless is Turkey, is the country of Turkey really that close to the Iran that a representative from Turkey could represent the interest of Iran in a debate, right? So, I mean, it's like a Canadian representing the interests of the United States. Like imagine like a Canadian who is like representing the United States in a debate. Be like, yeah, so I mean, even though the United States has told so many lies, George Bush lied about the weapons of mass destruction, Bill Clinton lied about everything and he did in the White House, touching everything in the White House. Uh, even though the Americans did all this stuff, like imagine a Canadian defending the America in a debate. That would be hilarious. The Canadians, I know Canadians, and they are like they're two-faced, they're backstabbers, they're liars. Canadians are two-faced, and it would be so hilarious if one of them was trying to defend the United States in a debate because Canada is constantly like how do you say backhanded, passive aggressive. Canada is constantly doing passive aggressive like criticism of the United States. Like Canada, for example, when after 9/11 happened, Canada was constantly putting out the idea that 9/11 could have been an inside job. So Canada is constantly doing passive aggressive stuff against the United States. Um, Canada often puts out a lot of gun control. Canada often pushes gun control agenda on Americans. So Canada is constantly pushing like propaganda and even anti-American stuff on Americans. Canada is constantly passive aggressively criticizing the United States. So to see Canadians try to represent Americans in a debate would be crazy, like would be scary because most Canadians secretly despise the United States. I mean, essentially, if you're Canadian by default, you're against the United States. I mean, You can't be loyal to both Canada and the United States if especially if there was a war, right? If there was ever another, because there was actually a war. There was in history, if you look at history, Canada and the United States actually had a war. And Canada beat the United States in a war. So imagine today, if, let's say, for example, tomorrow, Canada and the United States went to war against each other. All those people who try to say, oh, they're loyal to both Canada and the United States, well, then what are you going to do tomorrow if, for example, hypothetically, Canada and the United States went to war? You can't be loyal to both. You're going to have to pick a side, right? Everyone's going to have to pick a side. It's not really like you can be neutral in a war. I mean, if you are in a war, like you can be neutral if you're from a country where the war doesn't even affect you. Obviously, everyone then can be neutral. But if you're in a country where literally there are military troops in your country, like you've been invaded, like you can't just be like, oh, I remain neutral. Because then when those military guys come to your house, can you just turn around and be like, oh, I remain neutral, so you can't touch our house? Like you're in a war. You're in a war. They're not gonna accept your neutrality. So these Canadians who like to play the fence, all these Canadians who like to play the fence and say, "Oh, we're neutral. We like both Canada and United States. We like us both." Well, if the United States invaded Canada, and you tried to in your Canadian house, your big mansion, because Canadians live in big, beautiful houses. You're in your Canadian house, hypothetically speaking, you really think that if you turn around to American soldiers and say, oh, well, I'm a Canadian who's neutral, that the American soldiers aren't just going to take your Canadian house? Like no, like it's like they're not going to respect your neutrality. If that was the case, then in World War II with the Germans, with the Nazi Germans, then all those French people would have just been like, "Oh, we're neutral French people," and then the Nazi Germans would have been like, oh, "Okay," and then just left. Like no, like you can't. They don't care. The only countries that can claim to be neutral are countries that are totally out of it. That it's so easy for them to claim they're neutral when the war doesn't touch their country. But if a war touches your country, you're not going to be neutral no more. Heck, I don't want war, but I mean, if the United States invaded Canada, I would be like forced to protect our country. I would be forced as a Canadian to protect Canada. If I didn't protect Canada, that would be like a cowardly, I'd be a traitor. I'd be a cowardless traitor if I didn't protect Canada from an American invasion. So, hello, welcome FTK. Thank you for saying hi. God bless everyone. Thank you for your comment. God bless everyone. I know you said yeah, you said God bless Israel, and I just typically when I speak, I always say God bless everyone, so that there's no, you know what I mean, so that everyone's happy. I always say God bless everyone. So, but God bless Israel, of course. God bless America. Like I mean, God bless everyone. It's really sad that people are resorting to war. I do think that given tensions between Canada and the United States, and given the fact that the United States loves going to war, like the United States had a war with Germany, the United States had a war with Japan, the United States had a war with Korea, the United States had a Cold War with Russia, the United States had the war in the Middle East. The United States is constantly going to war. I actually wouldn't be surprised if the United States and Canada had another war, especially since we already had a war in 1812. Canada had a war in 1812 with the United States. I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, if Canada and the United States had another war. But what the United States doesn't know is that Canada and China have always been secret allies. China is a very good ally to to Canada. Canada and China have always been allies. You know, in the same way that they say that United States, Israel, the United States backs Israel, the United States has Israel in their pocket. It's the same way that they say Russia has Iran, Russia backs Iran. Well, China backs Canada. So those are the three pairs. The three pairs is United States, Israel, Russia, Iran, and China, Canada. So I don't agree with everything China does, but honestly, if it wasn't for China's support, the United States would probably have already invaded Canada, to be honest. We've even seen Chinese military troops doing training exercises with Canadian military troops. Like if you drive by Canadian military bases, if you ever drive by Canadian military bases, you can sometimes see Chinese troops in Chinese uniforms. Clearly, they're from communist China, and they're doing military exercises next to Canadian troops, you know? So that goes to show you the deep secret alliance between Canada and communist China. So FTK, I'm not sure if you're still there, FTK, but um, I want to ask you, are you worried about this whole thing turning into an all-out war in the Middle East? Are you worried that it's going to escalate? Do you think it's going to escalate into an all-out war in the Middle East? Vynoшу predloženia na obsуждение. Vynošu predloženia na obsуждение. I'm practicing my Russian, but I'm also saying Russian phrases that are relevant to the topic. So I'm not just gonna say, well, I am saying they sort of are random Russian phrases, but at least I'm picking random Russian phrases that at least are somewhat related to the topic of the Middle East and diplomacy, international relations, politics. So I'm picking political phrases. I'm reading them out in Russian to practice my Russian. I'm reading from a book actually. So in case anyone wonders, why did he suddenly say in Russian about something about coming to a peace agreement in Russian or something? Because yeah, I'm reading from a book, and I'm trying to practice my Russian at the same time doing the live stream. And hopefully, if we do get some Russians in here, I'd love to hear their opinion on the recent events. Я вашу газету выписываю. Я вашу газету выписываю. 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 Я вашу газету выписываю. I don't think I'm saying that right, but It was something like the English translation is I subscribe to your newspaper. And I was trying to say that in Russian, but the last word I was hard to pronounce. Я вашу газету выписываю. I don't think I'm saying it right. Probably the accent's off. The accent's not right. But I was trying to say it. It's hard. Some of these Russian words are hard to pronounce. Я вашу газету выписываю. Выписываю. Я вашу газету выписываю. Which is supposed to mean in English, I subscribe to your newspaper. Mi выражаем благодарность за поддержку. Мы мы выражаем благодарность, мы выражаем благодарность за поддержку. Еще раз. Мы выражаем, oh, let me say it again, okay. Мы выражаем благодарность за поддержку. There we go. I said it. It's one of my the things I like to do. I like to and it encourages more practice. It's actually a good thing because it encourages you, it forces you to practice more. So if I'm reading a sentence, especially if in a foreign language like Russian, and even if I pronounce one of the words wrong, which I know if I like knowingly pronounce one of the words wrong by mistake, I will repeat the whole sentence. I will repeat the whole sentence from start to finish because I don't like saying a sentence and then and I, so if even if it's just one word of the sentence I accidentally say incorrectly, then I will repeat the whole sentence in Russian. Мы выражаем благодарность за поддержку. Выразите свое мнение. Против кого выступил президент? Против кого выступил президент? Они выступили на телевидении. Они выступили на телевидении. Vyšla novая версия. If you're in the live stream, if you would so kindly, I would love to know where everyone's from. You don't have to state which country you're from, but if you want to, you can let everyone know where you're from, what you think about the war, uh, if you think it might escalate, if you're worried that the war is going to escalate and become even bigger, maybe even across the Middle East. Do you think the war is going to involve the United States? Pechalna yaglaju na naše pokolenie. Pechalna yaglaju na naše pokolenie. Ani nemagut plaga Ani nemagut pagladetsa veselkala. Ani nemagut pagladetsa veselkala. Ani nemagut pagladetsa veselkala. Veselkala. Ani nemagut pagladetsa veselkala. Gladite voba. Gladite voba. Gladite voba. Gladite voba. Говорите правду. Говорите правду. Поговорим о прошлом. Поговорим о прошлом. Сказано, сделано. Сказано, сделано. Сказано, сделано. Я скажу сам. Я скажу сам. Я скажу сам. Давай с тобой поговорим. Давай с тобой поговорим, давай с тобой поговорим. Я горжусь нашим президентом. Я горжусь нашим президентом. Я горжусь нашим президентом. Их потомки возгордились. Их потомки возгордились. Их потомки возгордились. Их потомки возгордились. Давайте работать. Давайте работать. Давайте работать. Нам не дано понять. Нам не дано понять. Нам не дано понять. Бог сделал, Бог взял. Бог дал, Бог взял. Бог дал, Бог взял. Действую, как умею. 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 Сделано в России. 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 Thank you everyone for coming to the live stream today. Спасибо за внимание, спасибо огромное спасибо. И I will do another live stream soon, but thank you for everyone who came. Thank you for everyone who liked the stream. Thank you for everyone who subscribed. I appreciate all subscribers. I appreciate everyone who likes. I appreciate everyone who likes the stream. I appreciate all subscribers. I also appreciate people who leave comments and leave their opinions. I appreciate people who leave their comments, leave their opinions. I appreciate subscribers and everyone who liked the channel. And I thank everyone for coming to live stream. And I just want to say that, of course, I want world peace. I hope that there's peace in the world. I think that war should be a last resort war. And of course, I want peace in the world, and war is a last resort. And I hope that the countries around the world can come to a peaceful solution, and we can avoid a major war. And we can all, hopefully, we can all come to a peaceful solution around the world, and the countries can stop fighting with hopefully the countries can stop fighting with each other, and the countries around the world can come to a peaceful solution. Padalites savetam, padalites savetam, padalites savetam, padalites savetam. Dobavlaju informaciju, dobavlaju informaciju, dobavlaju informaciju, dobavlaju informaciju, dobavlaju informaciju.